He's one of the co-founder of Maison H. And today, his background is he basically built his first building at age 19 after winning the Who Comes After Rem Koolhaas competition. He's an award-winning Beijing-based Dutch architect who received PhD training under Chinese master architect Li Xiaodong after being trained as an architect at TU Delft in Netherlands. The co-founder of Maison H is here to present his outline of how he tries to practice a path towards an alternative future to hopefully inspire others like yourselves here in the audience to also choose your own path towards an alternative future.
Okay, so his co-founder is a Beijing-born architect and business consultant. She is educated in Australia, holds a degree in corporate finance from Monash University and a bachelor's and master's degree in architecture from the University of Melbourne. She has over 10 years of experience as an architect and business consultant in China and abroad. She is the country manager and executive editor of Art Daily China. And as such, she has been responsible for the opening up of Chinese architecture to the international architectural discourse. As founding partner of Maison H, she is the key to making creative ideas a reality. So let us all welcome
Martjin de Geus and Zhang.
Hello.
Hi guys.
Hi.
Hi guys.
Hi.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Or afternoon.
Finally,
Hello.
glad to see you.
Pity we are not there. Your office looks very nice with all the animals, kind of like our office here. Good to see you. Also, pity we couldn't make it last year, but I'm glad we could try it again like this this year.
Yeah.
Happy for your invite.
Actually, for everyone who's watching, Martin and Han were actually originally part of Anthology 2021 Think Architecture, but COVID happened, and since they came from China, the airport stopped them on entering the Philippines. But we're glad to have them here again. Thank you.
Well, we saw the airport terminal, but that was it. Then we had to go again. Which was,
How's your Philippine experience in our terminal?
It was a bad experience. But, so I heard that you are building a new terminal, a new airport, so that might be better next time we come. So,
Yeah, maybe next year. We hope to see you next year.
no worries. We will be around, right?
Yes, we look forward to being able to visit Philippines.
Yeah, and thanks, Suma. I see you have made a great effort to totally digitalize the event. I see you have like a whole media room there, at least I saw on Instagram. So this looks very professional, much more professional than our setup here. We just have, a screen. Sorry about that.
Your talk, guys, and glad to finally be able to meet you.
Meet you guys.
Likewise. Okay, well, you've got the good books on the table already. You got the MVRDV buildings, I see, so that is interesting.
So Maison H book.
Okay. Should we just start, or what do you have any suggestion? We can just start, yeah? All right.
We give you the stage.
The stage is yours.
So Martin,
Stage is yours.
giving our lecture today, since the internet platform is perhaps not so conducive for multiple people giving presentations, I hope everyone can enjoy the story of us and how we work. And I will be around at the end to take any questions. See you soon.
So she's not running away from me,
Yeah.
although she sometimes does that, yeah? But not now. So I prepared a small presentation. Of course, I have too many slides and too many topics to talk about. So I will try to stick to my own timeline. Yeah, the talk for today I prepared is called "The One World, Two Futures."
Side by side.
Yeah, if there's any problems, let me know. But you can see my slides, right?
Online.
Okay, good. So I'm going to talk about it in 6 parts. As I was just introduced, my talk is maybe not so much about buildings or not so much about the projects that we do, but it's more about the things behind the projects. I think often when architects give talks, they like to show you the greatest and the best things of what they've achieved over the years, which is always nice and impressive. But I'd like to tell you more about the process behind what makes our practice happen. So we start with an observation. The world is changing. What does that mean? Well, the world is changing in particular aspects. There's financial systems that are changing. We can bank online now. Political processes are changing. People can vote via Facebook sometimes nowadays. Social cultural values are changing. I, as a Dutch person, live in China. Environmental conditions are changing as the planet heats up. All of this has a direct effect on our human habitat. We can see that. Of course, we have seen images like this, where there are polar bears that no longer have any eyes to walk upon. But that's not really what I'm talking about directly. I'm talking about the effect that humans have on the environment around us and the effect that this change in environment has on us humans. So this, for instance, is Beijing 500,000 years ago. I'm sitting now in Beijing, and this is how it looked like 500,000 years ago. It was one of the original sites of Homo erectus, so one of the predecessors for Homo sapiens. It was living here because it was extremely fertile. There's only a few places around the world where you can find this origin. 200 years ago, Beijing was still quite a nice and balanced environment between human-made, artificial, so cultural elements, and natural surroundings. So you can see here a site from the Summer Palace, the old Summer Palace in Beijing. And then 10 years ago, or 11 years ago, when I came to Beijing, it looked like this. So you can see the drastic change that human-made activities have had on the habitat of people. So I want to talk about that today. There is something that is happening, and it is larger than just the cities. So I call this a future one. It is the current future. It's a future of destruction in which things look the same. It's focused on the West. There is uniformity. It's dominated by man. It's egocentric, and it's based on consumption. It's why the world looks like it is today. But maybe there could be an alternative future, a future that's more diverse, it's more inclusive, it's equal, it's based on ecological principles, it's post-Western, and it could be people-oriented in a kind of inclusive way. So to get to this point, it's important to understand who you are. So I like to start with that. Who are you? In this case, I'm going to tell you who I am and what made me, and how maybe this could help you understand yourself and what you can do. So who am I? I am born in the Netherlands, which is a country in Europe, but it's a kind of strange country because it's fully flat. So this is the Netherlands. It has no mountains. And in fact, what you are looking at used to be a sea. We made land. So Holland is a country where people can change the world. You know, where there is water, we make land. Where there is land, we make water. Now, throughout my life, I have lived in different places in the world. So has Han. Han is born in Beijing, but she grew up in Australia. She lived in Berlin for a year as well to study. I was born in Holland. I went to America to work for a year. And then since 2010, I've been in China. Now, in my early start of the career, I worked with this company called Banish Architects, which is an architecture firm very focused on sustainable buildings. And as mentioned, I worked at MDRDV for a few years on really large-scale projects. But never mind. Before that, I want to show that it's not really about buildings or architecture. My life actually changed through a girl that I met, a girl that's called Jazzy. So maybe it's good that Han moved away, so otherwise she would get jealous. So this Jazzy, I met in my hometown. Her name means wonderful child in her original language. And she's actually, she's born in Apeldoorn in my hometown, which looks very nice, but it's very boring. But her parents do not come from there. So this is Jazzy. So Jazzy is a gorilla. Yeah, so it's not a human. It's a very hairy human, kind of. So she was born in 2002 on the first day that I started working at my local zoo. There was a zoo in my hometown, and I started working there. And she was born on the same day, so I felt really special bond with her. Of course, she didn't feel that, but I did at that point. And I have watched Jazzy grow up over the years. So this is her on the right, a few years later. And I think that journey of me being in my teenage years and seeing her grow up from so close and starting to explore her surroundings really shaped my understanding of architecture and the environment. This is her father. On the left is a bongo. I had to feed them every once in a while. And this is Jazzy on the foreground and her mom in the back, Dalila. And you might notice that this is quite strange maybe for a zoo because there is no gates, there is no fence. They are just there. And in fact, if you go there, you can also see that there are many of them because gorillas are a social group. So they live in a group of about 20 to 25 animals here normally, with one dominant man, several wives, and a lot of different children of different ages. I was very fascinated by that because it looked like they were enjoying themselves. In fact, I found that this was on purpose. This zoo was designed to be an environment totally made for the natural behavior of these animals. So the animals were encouraged to show their natural behavior. And they did that through smart design. So for instance, you can see on this map different dotted elements, and they represent different spatial elements on the island. The island is about 10,000 square meters, and there are about 20 to 25 gorillas on there at the maximum. And there are some elements that you can see through, but you cannot go through. Some elements you cannot see through, and some elements that are a little bit taller than other. And altogether, they form an environment that encourages interaction and play and encourages them to show their natural behavior, so they feel at home. And you could see that, for instance, on this photo on the left, there is, on the front, is a man, which is the father of Jazzy, called Bongo. And in the back, you can see maybe through the bush, there is another gorilla, and that gorilla is his son. And you know, if you're a teenage boy or if you have a teenage son, that you don't always want to be in front of your father, but you need to keep an eye on each other. So that's the same with gorillas. They need to kind of go away for a little bit sometimes. And I found that very interesting that later, when I started studying a bit, I found that there are some architects that also work according to these principles. Like this Dutch architect, Herman Hertzberger. This is a school, a primary school design. And you can see the teacher might stand here behind the glass and it can see this child and the other child, because she's a bit taller, he's a bit taller. But the children need to walk around the small wall. So they have a sense of privacy together. So this type of really small principles made me feel very comfortable because it showed the natural behavior. And it made the gorillas feel very comfortable as well. Unfortunately, I found that not everybody cares about the world as much as me and the people at the zoo cared about that. And this is a very sad example of a orangutan. On the top left is a pregnant orangutan who was left as the only survivor of a forest cutting. And on the right, you see another orangutan fighting a bulldozer. I'm sorry about that. So altogether, I found that there's a lot of people around the world that are destroying the habitat, not only of monkeys, but also of people. This happens, for instance, in the rainforest all around the world. And it is sometimes for fuel and sometimes for money. It doesn't matter. It's not the point. The point is, why do we need so much stuff? And why do we destroy all of that? Is there another way? Well, I found through my work at the zoo that there were two colleagues at the time who were not zookeepers, but they were inspired by my zoo to do something with that in their own discipline. So on the left, you see a guy called Willy Smits. He is the first person in the world that has been successfully able to restore a rainforest from zero. And this includes a system in which the local people and the local animals can both economically and environmentally sustain this new rainforest. It's truly amazing. I recommend you look up his TED Talk. On the right is a former Harvard professor who is analyzing the behavior of monkeys and applies that to businesses around the world. So I thought, hey, these are interesting people. Maybe I can do something with that. And then I read that of all the energy consumption around the world, which is one of the large causes for this deforestation, almost half of it is going to the building sector. And that includes mostly building operations and a small percentage building and construction and materials. So I thought, well, that's great. I should just study architecture, because if I do architecture, then I can solve this problem and the world will be much better. So it's very easy. So in 2004, I went to study architecture. And I want to do architecture not to make buildings. I wanted to do architecture to know how to solve this problem. So it was more as a means, not really as a goal. So I went to TU Delft, which was the best school of architecture in Europe at the time, I guess, but it looked terrible. You know, it looked like this concrete prison. It looked nothing like the nice, beautiful schools or this environment in Maison. In fact, I found that modern cities were worse than the worst zoos that I'd seen all over the world. On the left, you can see an example from Hong Kong. On the right, you can see an example from the Netherlands. This is all around the world. People were living in these small, concrete, dark, horrible prison cells. And I realized later that it's not only the environment inside those little cells that's a problem. It's also what we've done to the environment outside. You know, people are sometimes scared to send their children outside because of pollution, because of water pollution, air pollution, traffic, you name it. It's terrible. So I realized, you know, we really need to do something. This goes further than just the problem of the energy use. If we don't act now, our children will become the prisoners of the environments we are creating. So that's how I started my journey into architecture. And when I was studying there, you know, this was when I was about 18, there was a small competition for a building on the campus. And I won it, and this is the competition. It was finished a year later. And this is the small building in front. It's a small public building. And it was my statement as against this kind of dead concrete glass inhumanity that I saw everywhere. And this building was a very small building, but the point of the building was that it had a relationship with its environment in which both the building and the environment and the people using it would benefit. So you can see this building was called Black Box, which is a stupid name. I'm sorry. It was just called like that. But the point was there was a small lake at the top, and this lake was filled with nutrients and algae, and it was smelly and very bad. But I thought, what if we can use the nutrients from that pond to be food for plants on the building? So then the building would flourish because it would be green, and then the water would become clean as well and provide a new habitat. So that's what I did. I didn't know anything about buildings or structure. It was just my second year of studying architecture. But yeah, we were able to do that. In fact, people were really against it. I had to test it on my student room. I had a small part. But anyway, we built it in the end. This was then the world's first fully artificially grown green building. And the nice part of it is that the outside part where the plants grow in is actually made from recycled clothes. And the inside is a fully wood structure, which was not done in Holland at that time. And I thought it was nice to show that our environment is alive and changing, and it shouldn't be dead and concrete. So here I am on the left. I was opening this building, you know, in my second year of architecture school, which felt a bit weird. But there I am on the building side. You can see these large wooden panels were the largest wood panels produced, pre-assembled in the world at the time. And there I was, so 19-year-old zookeeper actually making architecture now. It was really nice because you could go to parties in your own building. It's really fun. And then I thought, wow, you see, this is great. The building is done. The competition was called Who Comes After Rem Koolhaas? And then I was going to be that person and I was going to save the world. Really nice. It was also published all over the world, in Japan and Germany. So I thought, good. I finished what I wanted to do, and now I will be the next god that's gonna save the world. But that didn't happen. Yeah, there were some problems along the way. So first of all, the Faculty of Architecture burned down a few years later. It was ridiculous. Somebody was getting a cup of coffee, and the whole building burned down. And maybe it was karma, yeah? So maybe it was good because it burned down. It should be dead anyway, in a way. But of course, I didn't want it to burn down. But as a result of that, my building also became unused, and somebody set it on fire 1 year later. So all of a sudden, both these buildings were gone. It's so strange because I was 21. I had won this competition. It was published all over the world, and it had also disappeared. So like everything that I'd done was just gone. That felt really strange. So I was quite disillusioned, so to say. So this brings me to my second lesson. I think you need to take a bit of time to think. I did that after all this part, and I found later that disillusion is one of the key aspects of the architecture profession. So I have encountered it a lot later. But anyway, I went to think for quite a while. This is Makula. And I started a kind of firm back in the Netherlands. I had finished my bachelor degree in Delft. I went to the US to work, and I started a small office more as a kind of think tank to reflect. So I invited my friends and people from different disciplines to start to think about what the new world could be looking like and what it should be and where it came from. And I found that the reason why the cities nowadays look like they do is basically because of this book by Le Corbusier from 1923, which is called Towards an Architecture. If you read the book, actually it's a good book, but people misinterpret the content and are only focusing on the architecture part. So I thought what we need to do, simply we need to make a new statement. We should focus on the habitat, not on the architecture. So that's what I found. And then, as you do as a kind of young European architect, you have to make a magazine and a manifest. So I did that. It's called Towards a Future Habitat. So we described, the fact that the world was changing. And I wrote that we believe in the power of collaboration for a stronger collective implementation. Exchange of ideas is essential. So you see, I was looking for a way to work with others, because I realized this is not something you need to be doing on your own. It's not you that's going to define the future of the world. It should be done with people together. I also realized what the role of architects could be. So I read this book by Bernard Tschumi, and it says, architects could act as revolutionaries by using their environmental knowledge in order to be part of professional forces trying to arrive at new social and urban structures. Architecture cannot change society, but through the processes of architecture, we can be part of change that's underway. So I thought that was amazing realization. So then I realized I needed to do something completely different because there was no future in where I was. People were really against these new ideas about sustainability in the Netherlands. They were really against this wood structure. And I wanted to go somewhere else where I could be part of this change. And then I took this great leap forward. When I went to Beijing in 2010, there were not many people like me going to Beijing because, most people knew about Beijing was this. China was this terrible new upcoming superpower that was going to ruin the world because of all the pollution and industry and new wealth. Okay, well, I came there. And I found, there's also a whole other kind of China. I went to study with a professor called Li Xiaodong, highly recommend you to see his works. I will have some later. Anyway, he recommended me to visit this building, and it's one of my favorite buildings ever. It is a library in Ningbo, and it is the second oldest private library in the world. And the great thing about this library is that there's no books and no building. So this is the library. So it's creating an environment for the exchange and interaction between people. So when you go there, you calm down and you want to talk and you want to exchange and you want to observe. And I thought that was an amazing idea. That's exactly what I thought architecture should be like. And I found that in China, people and buildings used to be a part of nature. They were never occupying nature. They were integrated with nature. Like this example, I love this. This is a small tower in the Summer Palace in Beijing. In fact, it is just outside the Summer Palace. And if this would be in Italy or in Europe, people would put the tower right in the middle of this mountain to show like, look, we conquered this mountain. But in China, people would put it next to the mountain so that people can see here is a beautiful mountain. So the relation between architecture and nature is much more harmonized. And that I found in the work with my professor as well. This was the first building I worked on with him, with Li Xiaodong. My part was really minor. I was involved with the facade, but the facade happens to be very important. So this is a small library just outside Beijing. And I thought, wow, that is the type of architecture I would like to do. That really adds something to the world. And I went to travel around in China, these beautiful, enormous landscapes. And I realized, Chinese people do not think they can conquer the planet because they don't move these mountains. They're not like Dutch people. Dutch people would change the mountain, make it flat, etc. And I was fortunate to work on some of these mountain landscapes that I've never been involved with in the Netherlands. For instance, this kind of project, this was in the mountain and we were exploring the spatial openness and we were working with planes and it was very free. There was no concept. There was no analysis. There was no mapping. Everything that I've learned in Holland about how to rationally approach design, we didn't use. So it's much more intuitive. And we created spaces that were together with nature, added with nature, etc. in the mountain. This is the first project I really did myself with him. So this was totally embedded in the mountain. And we used natural materials like bamboo, but also brick to create these layers of openness and closeness, a kind of mysterious. And I really was very inspired by that. And then he also inspired me to get to lesson 3, which is you should choose the life you believe in. What does that mean? It means that even if you are in a surrounding that you do not like Beijing, this is a picture of Beijing, you can try to create for yourself an environment that you are happy in, because that will make you more happy. So where I am now, my office is located in the center of the city. And it is a small courtyard. So I am sitting here now. It's also our home. So we have on one side, we have the office, which looks more or less like this. And on the other side, I'll show you here. On the right side, we have our home. And in the middle, there is a garden. And from this garden, you cannot see any other building. It's quite amazing. You're in the middle of a city of 30 million people, and you cannot see any of it. So you're totally in your own environment. We have chickens, we have dogs, we have fish. And they walk around through the office just like they do, I guess, with you all there, next with the turtles and so forth. And it's just nice because it makes you feel that you're part of something that's larger than just humans. And of course, we also try to work together like that. That's not focus. But then there was a second problem, because I went to China to study for my master's degree and with Professor Li, which at Tsinghua University, which was supposed to be the best university in China, But this looked just as terrible as the Delft University. So not a problem. I didn't like being there, you know. Also, the way of teaching was terrible. People just talked to you and there were these rows. It felt like I was in a prison. Because I had learned that people like to learn in a kind of much more intuitive way together. Like this. Remember the gorillas and these little children at the school. So I realized that this was because schools around the world had been considered to be learning factories. You know, they just needed to produce students and produce graduated students, etc. So I wanted to do something about that. So there was a competition again, which was I was quite lucky, which was just open for faculty when I had just joined the faculty. This is a typical floor plate in the school building. You know, it looks like the James Bond kind of prison in Russia. And we decided to open it up completely. And then we inserted this kind of element, almost like a home base. And here people could all of a sudden go anywhere they wanted. They could go up and down. There were rest areas inside and up. And so you could put stuff on the wall. And I love this photo because, you know, it's just a mess. That's what you would like in an architecture school. You want people to explore and feel creative and, you know, make their own environments. And we also made it very multifunctional. So we won, I guess, this competition because the school asked for 10 classrooms or so, and we provided 14 within the same budget, and we made them flexible, and we added all these other kind of spaces. So we tried to be very, very efficient in the space design. Now, you can see here from the top, some of the walls can also move. You know, they are flexible corridors with very simple materials. The budget was not very high, but we tried to really create a comfortable environment for studying. So let's see, there's a small video.
在这样的一个空间里呢，老师和学生，学生和学生之间在没有固定的边界，所以它本身是对一种限制的一种消除。所以在这样的情况下，对于设计或者任何工作来讲，是有利于它的这种交流和激发想象力的。
So the space becomes multidimensional as well. It's not an architecture where you are fixed in one environment. And I think especially in the schools of architecture, that's important. Imagine you're an architect and you're being trained just in those boring, stupid classrooms. Of course, you're going to design like that as well, because you're going to feel like that's how it should be. So we didn't want to do that. And we created, you know, spaces going up and down. We removed all the walls in between. So natural ventilation was possible. We didn't need air conditioning anymore. It was very, very kind of multifunctional project. And some of the walls could move. You see the wall on the right, it has moved 90 degrees. So now you can accommodate a kind of small lecture because we used modular furniture. So not large tables, but small tables that could be placed in groups or together and whatnot. So I'll show you here a bit of how these wall changes happen. You can see there's the sliding walls, there's the movable furniture. And then the wall can move as well. And like that, you can have a smaller lecture. And the nice thing with this polycarbonate is from the hallway, you can look inside. But from the classroom, the studio space, you cannot look outside. So you're not distracted, but you can always see what's going on. So I think that's very important. This is a view of people sitting for a lecture. But what I find the most important is that it's a comfortable space for all types of activities that are just part of our natural behavior. You know, if you're tired and you have a lunch break, sometimes you just want to lay down. Or if you want to, you know, like these people. So I think that's very important, and the school did not really allow for that. Yeah, altogether, this made me realize that I think it's necessary to go towards a kind of post-Western practice. remember, all these things that we were doing at that time were not really done because we wanted to have the architecture office or so. Me and Han were just kind of experimenting a bit here and there. And then we realized, no, we should make this a part of who we are. We need to help others live this life. So we started the office together. This was quite organic. So this is Han and I. And we started an office. Okay, in English, it's called Maison H, but that's not really the name. The name is Hanhe设计. And this is a Chinese name, and it means Han. My wife's name is Han. My name is in Chinese is He Martin. So together is Hanhe, but it also means Han, Chinese, and Helan, Netherlands. So it's kind of Dutch, Chinese, Martin and Han design theory practice. Well, you can't translate that to English, so we made a kind of anonymous name with it in English. But that's our name. And it stands for a statement against this kind of ego architecture. Yeah, we no longer want these large, monstrous structures that are just a waste of resources that are going to occupy and demonize our cities. I mean, I love CCTV as an architectural object. It's beautiful, but we don't need more of that. Yeah. And certainly we don't need any more inflated ego supremacy. This is by Bjarke Ingels. Bjarke Ingels thinks that he can master plan the world. Yeah. That's not how it works. I used to think that. Yeah? I used to think I was this amazing guy that's going to save the world. That's not how it works. We need to be much more humble towards who we are and what we can do as a part of these processes. So that's what Han and I try to do. As Pier Vittorio Aureli said, the most radical position an architect could take today is to do less, travel less, produce less. I think that's kind of our motto as well. So I'm going to show you a few small things, just that are really tiny, insignificant, but that are an expression of that. Like this is a project that I did with my students in Tsinghua some years ago, and it's for the renovation of a small courtyard next to the temple. As I said, if you have a courtyard house, you cannot see the surroundings. So you can actually not see this temple, even if you're standing next to it, because of the courtyard. So the simple thing we did is we inserted a kind of walkway that was raised so that you could see the pagoda. All of a sudden, this became a hotspot. And then underneath this bridge, we made this kind of library space where kids could play. And because of the way we added the stairs, this became a kind of infinite surrounding. So you could climb through and over and up and through. And this was an expression of the kind of flexibility of life that we found in the Hutong areas, the historic city center in Beijing. And it's quite nice. You can see how it works together. It's clearly new, but it is kind of complementing the experience. And I'm quite proud to say that this has been chosen to be shown at the Venice Biennale coming May as part of the Chinese pavilion. So that's really interesting because I'm not Chinese at all, and we are still very much foreign, but it's somehow we are accepted enough to be part of the China message to the architecture community in the world. So I'm going to show you this 30 seconds of some of the explanation behind it.
Such, it is not only the space within the yards that is of interest, but also the space between the yards. A unique urban realm results from this composition of yards, in which the space in between the yards creates a vibrant mix of public and private life. Our concept was inspired by this idea of people exploring each corner, creating a continuous spine of public life that strings the more private yards together. In this way, alleys, laneways, and streets almost become a result of the composition of yards, rather than a mere formal tool for circulation. What stands out is a people-centered social construct, inside and outside.
So what we did is we analyzed the behavior of people in the laneways and in the yards and tried to provide a small, simple structure to facilitate that in a new manner. That's it. It's no ego. It's just what people already do and try to show that more. Well, secondly, I think what is an important aspect is buildings that are already existing. We no longer need so many new buildings. So I'm going to show you two examples of how we did that. This is a restaurant / gallery space / flower workshop. The site was here, a terrible looking building at the base of a residential community. And inside was even more terrible than outside, because inside you can see there were 3 lots that were very narrow and very dark. There were almost no windows, as unusable for a restaurant. So what we did, again, we just removed everything that was not necessary, that was keeping us in the box. And then we had this massive open space all of a sudden. And then in there, we inserted a kind of new system. And the idea of this new system was to make a world that's as large as possible, where everybody could sit next to a window, because that's what you want in a restaurant. You want to see if you can see someone else. So this is what it turned out. And you can see we left the kind of bare concrete again here as a kind of a reminder of this horrible kind of strict structures of society. But inside that, we create this kind of very free realm where, you know, you can take your date on Valentine's Day, have a nice dinner on this little balcony, or you can go all the way to the top and you can see people move through space. And you can see here that there's a lot of different activities happening, all within this super strange, super bad space originally. And I think that's what architects can do. We can really, really insert new value into objects or spaces or places that seem valueless or that seem really terrible. So you can see here. I love that there are these views. You know? There's always something to see, but you're also always a little bit private. I think that's very important. You don't want to sit for everybody to see. And also important, I think, add a little bit of real nature in the building. So we put this bamboo in there, and really tall bamboo, and they do very well. And people like to go there. And you can see this bamboo also blocks the view a little bit. So you don't feel too uncomfortable if you're sitting opposite of another person. And somehow the space itself becomes art. So this building is also used as an art gallery. You can see the photos hanging around. That changes every few months or so. So it's really a multifunctional universe with, as a starting point, this kind of Japanese refinedness, because the cuisine is Japanese. So at the top, on the 3rd floor, they also have some Japanese tatami rooms. And I think maybe on Sunday, if Fujimoto is speaking, he might show his last hotel that he opened in Tokyo, and not in Tokyo, somewhere outside of Tokyo. And well, look very similar from this. Yeah. So, but this one 4 years earlier. So you might see it has also the ladder pipes. Doesn't matter, but it's nice to see that this approach of people understanding the value of all their structures to insert new life is becoming more common. And I always, you know, it's nice to make some nice stuff as well. This is on the outside. You can see also from the outside, we try to match with the surroundings. So there's the curved staircase and then the curved tower on the right. Now, I really believe in this repurposing of older buildings. So this, but that sometimes requires a really, really difficult process, especially if these buildings are occupied by different users. So currently we are working on several projects like this, some large, some small. But this is an example of a full building. This is about 10,000 square meters in the middle of Tsinghua University, where me and Han are teaching. And this is a student service center, actually it's supposed to be. But what we're doing is we're coming up with a model of how to approach these kind of buildings. It's a terrible kind of building because it's circular. It's like a C-shaped, so nobody can get a normal table even, because there's always a little bit of curve. But it's very powerful. It creates a nice yard in the middle. But the inside is even more terrible. It's super dark. It's really unusable, really unfriendly for occupation. And Tsinghua is currently the world's number 15 university worldwide. You cannot be a top world university and have your students be kind of educated in spaces like these. These students need to grow up and be free and creative and innovative. They shouldn't be dark and oppressed. So the university asked us to have a look at this and have a look at what's an appropriate space for promotion of this type of new lifestyle. So we analyze, what do students do nowadays? They don't just learn anymore behind in front of the teacher. They learn while playing music, while being outdoor in a performance area, while meditating, while dancing. And we spread these activities through the landscape, through the building in various ways. We connect the outside with the park, with the inside of the building. We gave it also some life and color. And we added some small things, like there's some staircases that we added to connect to unused rooftop terraces at the end. And we made a new opening at the top. So this building can be much more occupied. And of course, we thought it's crazy. I mean, that's what we would like. I would love to have this kind of blue garden where there has a psychology department that should be there. And we thought it should be nice to have a more calming environment where people can do counseling and work. And one kind of really vibrant environment with a cafe. Now, I thought that's never going to happen. But yeah, we are building that now. So we are working floor by floor with each of the departments. And there are certainly at least 10 departments that are in this building that we do one floor and they move and they go. And it is incredible to see how we can change a little by little like that. Now, also, I realized that just like today, I think it's important to teach others. And this I call post-Western theory. What that means, when I went to study architecture, this is what they taught me. They taught me that the architecture started with Vitruvius, that Le Corbusier had invented everything, and that Rem Koolhaas was the god. Yeah, but I found actually there's much more to architecture theory. It is also Eastern. It is also non-Western. And there's this amazing array of theory, and that is totally left out of the Western architecture curriculum. So we need to do that. And I highly encourage everybody to learn more about that. And I write about that, but there's others that write about that. This fantastic book. You can see some of it on the website. Some of the things that are happening in Asia are much more advanced than in the West, like the way that the Biennale is held in Shenzhen, much more interesting than in Venice. Yeah, the way that the drawings can be an inspiration is much more fascinating than I think what's happening in the West. I'll just go through that. Because in the end, I also teach in Tsinghua, which is the a university in China. And this is also not the typical university like we have in the West. It's a university that combines teaching, research, and practice. So it's about you having an idea, you researching that and teaching with your students, and then being able to implement that. And the amazing thing is that since 2008, we have this program as an international master's program. And so far, we've welcomed students from 50 countries around the world. And they come to China. And this is not the same as in Europe. In China, people from Africa, from North Korea, from Kazakhstan, as well as people from America, South Korea, and Europe are coming. This is not happening in Europe. It's so much more global. It's really amazing. And for some reason, we've also done very well in the international ranking, and we've actually been listed as the 5th best master program in the world in 2018. Where when I first came to Tsinghua, it was on no ranking. It just didn't exist 10 years ago. Yeah, so it's really impressive to see this change happening, and it's impressive to see that some of our students, we do these studios and then we try to enter some competitions, and they've won fantastic prizes. They won a girl from Malaysia and a girl from Thailand who together won the competition for the Council on Tall Buildings and Urban Habitat, which was in Chicago. It was an amazing award. This year, 2 of our teams scored in the top 3. One was the winner, first place, for the Future of Housing competition in Taiwan, which was headed by Francine Huben from Canon. I mean, it's so satisfying to see other people excel, beyond your own projects. So to kind of close up, is that I've found through all these small changes, we can actually do something about the big problems. A few years ago, we were asked by my old zoo to have a meeting because they had a new director. And it's been my lifelong dream to do something for the zoo. And this was a really revolutionary zoo at the time that it was started. 50 years ago, there was no cages and so forth. And we were looking at what is the next step for this world-setting zoo. And we are working long-term with them. And we just completed the first phase of the regeneration last year. And what we did is something very stupid. We tried to make no buildings because people don't come to the zoo for architecture. But what we did, we tried to tell people a story of how people are part of the natural environment and how biodiversity is a much larger threat to our future than climate change. So what we did, we started making an insect hotel. There was some existing building on the site that had to be removed. It was falling apart. And we used that building and some logs and trees and rocks that were around the site to make this insect hotel for different species of insects, for 10 or 12 species. We worked together with all kinds of biologists. Now you can see here, it's very simple. You just put different layers, but you need to know which species you are designing for. So they need to have different materials and different conditions, and it can't be wet, etc. But now, that's how we started, about the story of biodiversity, and it became the largest insect hotel in the world. It's the Guinness World Record insect hotel. I didn't even know it existed, but now at least I can say as an architect, I have a Guinness World Record. And why is this important? Why is the insect hotel important? Well, it's nice for the environment, but it also creates a wall. So this is sorry. It also creates a wall between the area on the left, the L, and on the right. On the left is the feeding area for the monkeys. That's where the monkeys live. And on the right is for the Homo sapiens, for people. So they don't want to mix. The monkeys, of course, want to also go for where the people are. But we make sure that there is some water in between with a bridge. And then this insect wall becomes a natural barrier between these two species. And then the necessary buildings that were needed to be there to keep the monkeys at night were integrated in this wall. So you can see we worked with the landscape, we worked with the buildings, with the insect hotel, to create an environment where people can be one with the monkeys. So the monkeys are just out there, just like the people. This is how it was when it was just planted. This was 3 months later, and we work with a whole variety of local species to attract local insects that then would live in the insect hotel. And then the monkeys would eat the insects, and then the people could see the monkeys eat the insect, and then they could understand that insects are in fact important, and they can be growing there. So here you can see some people walking there. And we made this in a way that people are not aware of these barriers. So if you walk, you don't even see the water at first. It looks just like a seamless path where you and the monkeys are in one world. And the flowers are doing amazing. There's an insect feeding around. There's wildflowers. And then we realized that there's also some aspects from nature that we eat as people, right? Like coffee. And we integrated the people, the food chain of the people into the food chain of the insects. And we made a feeding spot for the Homo sapiens right next to the insect wall as well. This is a small pavilion. It's made of wood, and it is a zero carbon building. Actually, the whole project is a zero carbon. And it is prefabricated off-site and shipped there, and it was put together in about 1 week. And you can see it is just very minimal architecture. It's just a roof. And then this is the wood joints on the construction last year. And you can see here that there is actually the building footprint itself is really small, just these two little boxes that we put on an angle so that we could cover it easily with the roof. And these two boxes each are made up out of modules. The left one has 4 modules and the right one has 2 modules. And they're shipped there by truck. So the whole process is super sustainable and there's very, very minimal impact on anything. And you can see here are people sitting in a nice kind of curve behind their insect wall, and they can still see the monkeys that are walking around behind them. So it just feels like we're in the same environment, and we use all kind of smart little techniques to keep them separated, if necessary. Oh, this is like this. Unfortunately, I have not been able to see it completely finished yet because of COVID. Yeah, but it was opened last year in June by the Princess Margriet, Princess of the Netherlands. And it was quite amazing because, I mean, we have a monarchy in Holland, and the king and the queen and princess are quite still important, but they care a lot about being involved in showcasing the leading examples of how we could do things with humanity. And I really liked this project, so she came to open it. Here she is with letting the monkeys out. Here are the monkeys out, and you can see there's no cages in between. Huh? You can just touch them. They could jump on you. Of course, you're not allowed to touch them. Yeah? But if they jump on you, yeah, then they have to be standing there. So it's like that. So altogether, I think I'm almost at my time also. So I have just a conclusion. You know, in the 1970s, architecture was all about being so powerful and strong. Huh? And this is a guerrilla image at that time. It's like, we're going to be radical and we're going to be angry. But first of all, guerrillas are not like that. Guerrillas are very calm. You know, they're vegetarians. So on the right, you can see the newspaper made an article about me and the zoo and our design. And they said it's about merging the guerrilla and the architecture somehow. So this could be a possibility of this future for our world, I think, a future that is based on empathy, on inclusiveness, and which is post-Western. Yeah? And I also really want to tell you, although Han has still, gone away from me, it's not about just men. You know, this is an excellent example of this kind of fact where people don't even know that there was a woman involved. But this is Aldo van Eyck, and he's a famous Dutch architect from the early 20th century. He was famous for taking leftover spaces in the city of Amsterdam and turning them into playgrounds, community spaces. And in his lifetime, he designed almost 1,000 playgrounds. And they have become known throughout the Netherlands as a place to join the community together, which he did with his wife. Him and his wife had a firm together, making this happen. And they really believed in creating a more inclusive future. And I was also really happy to see this year's Pritzker Prize winners, Anne Lacaton and Jean-Philippe Vassal. I met Anne several years ago in Zurich, and I was so impressed by their very genuine approach to making our cities better for the people. And the way they think about it is incredible. You see this example of this housing project. On the left is how it looked like. On the right is after they're done. And they made sure that every unit renovation would be done in one day. So the people could go to work in the morning, they could come back, and they had a whole new house. They had their facade wall removed. It was replaced with floor-to-ceiling glass. A winter garden and balcony were added. No one had to move out. It cost less than demolishing. Apartments were expanded. I think if you can do that as an architect, then you deserve to be an architect. Yeah? Then you're really doing what's right for architecture. So the conclusion is tomorrow is not about what I do or about me or Han. Tomorrow is you. The world depends on you because the world is changing. What to do about that? You need to think. You need to think, what are you going to do about that? Try to reflect in your own area what you could do and how you could make it better. choose to create your own life. So choose to really then do that if you can. Small things are fine. It doesn't need to be large. You can start really small, because if you start small, you can affect the people around you, and they might affect other people. And then you can help other people live this life. Lastly, you need to tell others how you've done that. We need to teach others. And altogether, you always have to remember it's important for the whole future of the world, but you need to act where you can act. Yeah, so that is what I have. If you want to read more, Julia and Heidrun did an excellent interview with us some time ago, and you can visit it on their website. It's really, really, they've done a really good job, and you can follow up. And thank you so much, and we're open to have any questions and whatnot if that would be helpful. Yeah. Thanks so much for having us. I will stop my speech. Hannah's back, so I didn't scare her away yet.
Hi.
Hey.
I'm still speechless from his lecture.
Thanks for the lecture, guys.
It was great, especially since we all love animals here as well.
Yeah, I see that. Really nice.
This is our special guest for today.
We had to put our dogs to the other side, otherwise they would be jumping up at me all the time.
So we actually have. You want to say something?
No, I'm good.
We actually have a question from our audience. She said, "Hi Martjin, as an architecture student, it is refreshing to see multi-dimensional spaces that encourage a fluid exchange of ideas. However, how do you ensure acoustics are managed within the flexible classrooms?" I think she's talking about the Tsinghua renovation.
Yeah, that's very important, acoustics, and that's also a part of the natural behavior. And we, from the beginning in that project, fought really hard to put the acoustic baffles on the ceiling. And they said, no need, no, it's going to cost money, we don't need that. And then after they opened, it's a terrible problem with the acoustics, of course. But we tried to counter it in two ways. So yes, there should have been acoustic ceiling. So in the next project we're doing, this C building, we have acoustic ceiling, yeah, because now they know it's important. But also we used a lot of felt on the walls. So the felt is good because you can pin up your drawing, but it also absorbs acoustically. So it was helping a little bit, but not enough. So you need to put acoustic baffles, and the best thing, you need to make sure that they have the right acoustic absorbency. Even in this current project, I got really angry at the contractor recently because they were going to use this really cheap acoustic board, which, yes, they say it's acoustic board, but the absorbance is really, really low. So it's not going to work still. Yeah, they will find out. But, they don't always want to listen to you. So it's really a problem of you might know how to do it and you might know how you think it should be done, but that's not enough. So you also need to give them the opportunity to experience that. It's not going to be effective if I'm just going to tell them, you need to do it like this because that's what you need to do. If they say, well, we don't want it, we don't think it's necessary, okay, But I did say it was important. Yeah, we know. Okay. Oh, and then they found, Martin, it's really loud. Yeah, I remember. Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. So that's how we try to deal with it. Right?
Yes.
Thank you. Oh, we have another question. So, hi Martjin, I've always looked up to architects who studied and practiced abroad and eventually go back to their home country, such as Neri and Hu. Your practice is definitely one of a kind and uniquely intimate. How do you feel is the difference when a Westerner learns about the Eastern side of things and vice versa?
Well, yes. First of all, there are not so many Westerners coming to China to study and then go back. It's even less. So most of the Westerners that come to China are coming here to just build, because there's a lot of stuff that needs to be built. But they don't come to study so much. But they should, because it really transformed my life. And not just studying here, but also meeting Han and working with Han. You know, I used to be such an arrogant, egocentric kind of asshole architect, you know. Really, I thought I knew everything the best because that's what I learned in Delft. You know, oh, we're so great, we're the best, we can do everything so well. Okay. And then Han got very angry at me often, saying, well, why do you think that? And you know, also my professor, Li Xiaodong, really helped me to calm down. And you know, this is my calm down version. Eh? You might think I talk a lot and very fast, but I'm calm now. So imagine 10 years ago. But apart from that, I didn't realize that so much, but when I came back to Holland to when we were doing this project for the zoo, they told me, hey, Martin, you are really different in your approach than other architects that we've asked here. I said, oh, why? Well, first of all, you can do everything. You can do the landscape and the architecture, and you constantly talk about how to integrate this. People here, they want to just build their building, you know, and they can't do the rest because they're all about how amazing their building should be and how beautiful it should look. I said, I don't care about that. We first need to look how the building or how the function, how the landscape can help you. And then we just do that together. So I realized that is a big change because this harmony between environment and building is something that you don't get taught in the West. Would you agree?
Yeah, I definitely agree. But I think the way that perhaps culturally Eastern people work is also something that I think really shaped Martin a lot. It was difficult for him to come into this environment because, as all of you know, Asian culture is not really about confrontation. Asian culture is about finding ways for everybody to be okay with a decision. You know, we're a lot more about face value, and we also really believe that respect needs to be earned. So this was something I think that was a challenge for him. But at the same time, it's not just our approach that it really changed. You know, it didn't just change his or our approach. But I think you can also really see it in our architecture because, you know, the way that we work with clients, contractors, and everybody involved in China really teaches you to think in a much more holistic way because you are forced to, and that really comes through in architecture. So I think over time we have found that our architecture, you know, in terms of the maybe the aesthetics or how it looks, has become more secondary. And the needs of our clients, the needs of the end users have become much more important. And perhaps if both of us, if I had not come back to China, if he had not come to China, perhaps architecture wouldn't address this need so well, I think.
Yeah, awesome.
Okay, thank you. We have another one. Okay, so we have another question. What are your thoughts about certification of green building?
Oh,
well, that's a good question also. You know, when I was working in the US, I was working with Danish architects, right? They're one of the forerunners of green architecture. And we were working on a really large project for Harvard University. And it actually was just finished this year, so 15 years later. And it was rated LEED Platinum. And it was also post-occupancy evaluated that it was the healthiest, safest, and most happy lab building in the world, you know, which is great. So performance-wise, it's ticking all the boxes. And it also works great. But, so I understood a lot about how this LEED system and how the point systems work. And the problem is that people design to get a certain number of points. They don't care about making a sustainable or green building. They just care about getting enough points so that the client can say it's LEED whatever, or whatever building code you use, and they can get cheaper bank loans. Yeah? So that's not a way architecture should work. Yeah? So I think first of all these systems have an ulterior motive behind them. It's good that we try to set standards for green buildings. I'm really for that. But it should be much more about energy performance in general and much less about whether you are having a shower in your bicycle storage park. I mean, that is not sustainable. Yeah, it encourages the people to use the bike. I know that. But that's not what it's about. The big issues are really climate, envelopes, and performance. And in fact, we are working with, in our studio now with the MVRDV, and they have a research unit, which is called MVRDV Next, where they use kind of new technologies and tools to assess the performance of urban designs and buildings. And it's called How Good Are We? So we are going to try to assess actually existing structures and existing urban patterns and to find how can we actually judge that designs that we are doing are good for the environments that we need. Because the green building standards only consider the building. Again, it's just the object, there's just some parameters. I mean, I understand it's necessary, but we need something much more how to say that, much more effective in a way. So much more performance driven on the energy uses of buildings and their relation to the urban structures, I would say.
So, you want to read it?
In one of your projects, where the monkeys and Homo sapiens, or humans, really interact with each other, how does the space transform at night? Are monkeys sensitive to artificial light? Does it disturb their circadian rhythm and their sleeping habits? Like birds. How do you approach the issue of light pollution?
Yeah. Well, that's also a good question, very specific. And it's interesting because when you work with animals, you need to know the animals, just like you need to know your dog and so forth. We did a lot of studies, and in fact, two things. First of all, at night, most of the monkeys in the zoo will go inside a night enclosure for two reasons. One, to prevent against theft. You know, some of these animals are highly endangered, so they're very valuable on the black market, unfortunately. So they need to be housed in an environment that prevents people from getting there. Yeah? So unfortunately. But secondly, some of those monkeys come from the tropical environments. So they need to be housed at night inside because Holland can get quite cold or it can start to rain suddenly. So yes, they need to be inside and we need to consider the light. In fact, in those buildings, it's an innovation. I think it has not happened in zoos on this scale before. We have worked with a whole team of light engineers to create adaptive LED lighting in combination with UV lighting. So this adaptive lighting system actually mimics the light conditions of outside naturally, and the sunsets and the sunrises, and the UV light adds the UV that's necessary to make the vitamin D in their bodies, just like with humans. So there is a balanced interior climate that is equal to their outdoor climate. In case they need to go in at night, in case they're also sick, they also get sick, so they might need to be kept indoor, and for all variety of reasons. So we needed to work very, very carefully with all kinds of engineers, from the visitor experience people to the biologists and the zookeepers and the animal experts. And I think that's really what's great about this kind of projects, as Hanne said, what we've learned, to work together. We are here to mediate all these needs from the monkeys, from the people, from students, from anybody. And together we can make that happen. Yeah.
Last question. We have, what do you think is or are your main pointer points in conceptualizing your designs? For your design process, when do you know when you don't need to intercede or influence that much as an architect for a certain project? Do you guys have a set formula or a core approach or a set of questions you use? If yes, what are these questions?
Well, that is a very broad, but also kind of a specific question. Because in a way, yes, we have it is about approach. Yeah? Mm-hmm. So what is our approach to when we get some project? How do we define what we need to do? And that is the same. It's not a style and it is not a magic formula, but what we do, and Han is also very good at that, is finding what is it that needs to be done here? What's the problem? What do we need to solve, first of all? Yeah. And that begins with an assessment of the people that are involved. What are the people? What are their motives? Why are they coming to us? Why do we need to work with them? And because they don't always say what they want, they might say we want A, but actually they want B. So you need to figure out the true problems and you need to figure out the true condition. So that means the condition of the existing building or the condition of a new site, the condition of the future use, the condition of et cetera, all that. And that together defines, I think, our initial approach. I mean, in general, our approach is to produce less, to not destroy, not move trees, not cut trees, not remove buildings. So as little as possible. But sometimes that doesn't work. But we start there. And in terms of style, I think it depends really on also the projects. Some projects can have more freedom. If you do a project in, let's say, maybe in the middle of China somewhere, maybe like Chongqing, which is a very vibrant, large city, people are very free and the minds are very active and very bustling. So you can do an architecture that's kind of more and more free. But in Beijing, people are very serious. It is the capital city of, the world's second largest economy. You cannot just do anything. You need to be very, very careful in understanding what you can do and what not. So that all those conditions are in the back of your mind when we are working. It's not like we read them out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It comes from our intuition, I would say.
Yeah, it's very important, intuition.
So Le Corbusier says, your intuition is the sum of your acquired knowledge. It means, so everything that you know somewhere in the back of your mind will come from your feeling and from your intuition. And Han is very good with feeling people, and I am not always so good at that. So I am better, let's say, to sense the problem. And then together, we define a direction.
Yeah, I think for us, it's very important. People, I think that's the core of our design approach. And that's like that, the topic of people, how it influences our design is on many levels. I think first of all, before we even take on a project, we would assess, whether this project, first of all, whether this project and the client, us and the client, is it really a good mix? And when I say a good mix, I don't mean just to be like the same styles. No, it means, are we able to, through our, the skills we have and the special kind of, the kind of special designs we can offer, can we really offer them what they're looking for? Are we really what they're looking for? Is their project needing what we can give them? Because often architects are very, very enthusiastic, and they want to do as many projects as possible, explore many ideas as possible. But what I think many of us often forget, especially when you're a young architect, is that a project can only be as good as those who contribute to it. And the most important ones, obviously, are you and the client. Now, if your intentions, or if you're, if you're kind of, how can I say this?
Your values. I think it's about the values.
Yeah, and your specialties don't work with each other, it can never be a good project. So that's the first thing, the first level of, interpersonal factors we have to consider. And then second, is the end users. Are we able to deliver for them what it is that they need? And often they don't really know what they need. It takes, the skills of observation of an architect to go and observe and really find out, like what Martin said, what the problem is and how we can solve that problem. So, and third of all, we definitely trust our intuition always. I think that's really, really important for architects, especially for young architects who are going to be going into the workforce. I think if you're a real designer, intuition is a natural thing that you have, and you have a natural intuition for space, for proportion, for the way something feels. And often I think, especially through our teaching, we see students trying very hard to prescribe themselves to a certain aesthetic or a certain way of doing architecture. But that's not, I think that often produces non-desirable results. So we try to trust our intuition. That's also how we design together. If something feels intuitively not right, we have to find out why it makes us feel like this is not right. And we'll always try to improve ourselves like that.
Yeah. That's about it.
All right, so
I think that's the last question. It was a great talk, guys, and Arvin.
Great talk. Thank you.
And we'll see them again on Friday. On Sunday.
Yeah, I'll see you guys again soon. So more
That's
questions
right.
then, right?
Thanks so much for the good questions. Hope to see you in real life at some point, but we continue a conversation on Sunday. And good luck there with the rest of the speakers these days. Huh?
All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you.